The following podcast is a SIMPRONTO Media production. Welcome to the Waste Away podcast.
Hey guys, welcome to this week's episode. And today we are talking to Barton Scott from Upgraded Formulas. So welcome, Barton. Tell people a little bit about yourself and about your story.
Hey guys. Well, thanks for having me on. Thanks for listening. So I founded Upgraded Formulas because in my early 20s, I already knew more about nutrition than I felt most people would ever learn. I'd studied it since I was a teenager. I'd been an athlete. And then a couple things changed. I lost someone close to me. And about that time, I started to lose my short-term memory, and which coincides with a lot of traumatic events in life. And it was my mother. She had an aneurysm. And although I could be at peace with that, the thing that really shook me was this shouldn't have happened. You know, she had, access to good medical care. She was in quote unquote good enough health, but I had recently helped her lose about 20 pounds. And, but she's not overweight. She had just, I feel like just a very relatable sort of fate that happened, and something that I felt like if that could happen to her, and she had, access to, we're close to some of the best hospitals in the world, some of the best doctors, had good insurance, all these different things. None of that really prevented, right? So I started thinking about how to live healthy and how to live longer. And because she passed at 68, and I remember thinking, it'd be different if it was 98. But it just wasn't acceptable, right? And then I started thinking about, well, what's the most root cause thing that I could work on? And I'd studied as a chemical engineer at that point and finished and had a good grasp of that. And it was very clear for me. I know we mentioned this in the summit, but that we did together, but it was, I guess for me, it was because it happened in my early 20s and not at, in my late 70s or onward or something. There was just no way I could accept that. And I think I've heard you tell a similar story too, right? Where you're just like, I have a lot of things I want to do in life. And, that's how I've always felt that way. So I knew I needed the energy, and I knew there needed to be a sustainable way. And just, it was so obvious to me from being an athlete that things like stimulants, like caffeine, it was never going to work long term. It's just never going to be the solution. And really it was stealing from today's energy or from tomorrow's energy for today. And it didn't really fit. So eventually I realized, like, why hasn't, this problem is going to be solved by minerals or elements, because it's an elemental world. Our bodies are made up of the periodic table, basically. And I started to think, well, how do we make that absorb better? Because when I did a hair test, which we'll talk about here in a second, did a hair test, and now we know that hair testing is much more accurate than blood for a lot of different reasons. It's part of the reason why companies drug test and they use hair, which, by the way, we don't test for drugs. We just test for minerals and heavy metals. But when I did a hair test, I realized, and this is about 10 years ago now, I realized I was deficient in things I was already taking. So when you think about that. If that's you take a test, you realize you're chronically deficient in things you're already taking. You're taking the right brands that are supposed to be the best. I already knew those things. I already knew the good brands and things, but it's not about quality. It was about absorption.
Well, first, I want you to answer the question, what is the difference between mineral deficiency and nano mineral deficiency?
Yeah, certainly. Well, the thing that I realized is that, and it goes into this, is that you have to make anything you want to absorb into the cells and that doesn't go through the gut, you have to make that small enough to get into the cells. So I realized, okay, well, that's the delivery mechanism. We've got to get the nutrition into the cells without digestion, because we all have leaky gut. A lot of us eat gluten and dairy, and drink contaminated water still from unknown sources, and and we're living in polluted cities. We're flying around the world, and we're exposed to jet fuel and all sorts of things that interrupt endocrine systems and what have you. So, I created this new category of supplementation. Eventually, it certainly wasn't an overnight thing. I've been working on it for years now, but we have great products now that actually work, that actually absorb. The key to it was thinking like a chemical engineer, which is we're the only group of people that are trained in how to build a process, notice detail, and then how to make something absorb really well. So I took that lens. I took the lens of a nutritionist. I took the lens of, seen patients and seen their struggles much later in life over and over and over. I realized certain things were inevitable. And then I knew what I needed as an athlete. And I just kind of saw these different lenses, or saw through these different lenses, and everything seemed to line up with minerals being the key area of focus. So that is what we do today at Upgraded Formulas. If anyone's listening, they can check out the website. But I'm happy to get into, I know we talked about some sample results. So, we could discuss those or wherever you want to go with it.
Quick. Yeah. So first explain to me. So like what I'm hearing you say is that if someone goes, and let's say I know some of the biggest things that are on your website that you feel that people are deficient in are things like zinc, iodine, copper, selenium, magnesium, so forth. And so what I'm hearing you say is that when someone goes to get their blood work done, and so they say, okay, can you check my magnesium levels? Can you check this? Can you check, my potassium? And then the doctor says, yep, these levels look fine. And then you could go to you and get a hair sample. And when you get a hair sample, you can say, you know what? No, these levels are not right. One area that may not be right. So talk of how important the ratio of one mineral to the ratio of another one. Because I know you said for me, my sodium was low and my potassium or my sodium. I can't remember.
No, you're right. You're basically So that was a great example to choose, actually. So in your case, individually, your sodium was high, was elevated, right? And your potassium was also somewhat elevated. But the ratio of sodium to potassium is an indicator and a strong indicator of adrenal function. And for anyone listening, you probably heard about, you may have a fuzzy idea of what adrenals are. You may know exactly what they are, what they do. But just for anyone listening, your thyroid is not going to work the way it should if your adrenals aren't working the way they should. And people think it's hormone related, which it is, but what's the building blocks of hormones? Minerals. So how do you get those minerals to absorb? And then how do you test in a way that can give you accuracy around which ones you need? That's what we do. So in your case, Chantel, you have a very similar pattern that I see and we see at Upgrade Formulas pretty often, which is, you're a hard charging entrepreneur. You do so much and it shows because you push yourself really hard. So congratulations. And I would say, just thank yourself for doing all the things you do. I know, but it results in you have low adrenal function right now, or you could say adrenal insufficiency. The good news, though, is that for her and for anyone listening, this is fixable. This is, optimizable. So, yeah.
So if my potassium looks like it's high, but the ratios aren't right, would I then take the potassium that you guys have, even though it's high, because it's going to absorb better?
Yeah, it's a great question. Right now, in your particular case, what I would want to see you supplement first for, say, 30 days would be sodium, more salt. So that looks like, in your case, based on your levels, this is not general advice that people should take, but so that people have a concept, I think it's safe to explain. In your case, I would say you should be taking something like a teaspoon to a teaspoon of salt every day, in addition to salting your food. And that's Himalayan or Celtic salt that has a bunch of trace minerals in it. That's a big thing. And then after 30 days, after that salt balance comes up, you're going to retain the potassium better. And taking some of ours at that point based on your level of potassium would be a good idea. But it's a stages thing. And it's really powerful when you do it right.
Let's talk about the sodium for just a second, because obviously we talk about fasting. That's our big thing here on this podcast. And so, like magnesium, sodium is an essential nutrient, and you have to get it from either food or supplements. Your body can't make sodium on its own, and your body needs sodium to maintain fluid volume, blood pressure, transport other nutrients. It needs it to keep your muscles, contracting and functioning. And so what happens is when you start fasting, your kidneys start to excrete more sodium, right?
Right.
And extra fluid. So that's why maybe a lot of times when people are fasting, they're feeling like they're going to the bathroom more. And so, symptoms of low sodium would be like, headaches or lightheadedness or dizziness or fatigue. So how do you know how taking sodium to take? Like if someone is fasting, are you taking like like right now for me, would I take, an eighth of a teaspoon? How much sodium would you recommend that I take?
It's a great question. Well, something that I do, and this depends on levels for the individual person, and then those levels change over time. This is why I like testing like this over, say, genetic testing. Genetic testing tells you the story of what should be based on your genes, but we understand that genes are not destiny now, hence the whole field of epigenetics. Anyway, going back to, say, just general guidelines. So I have this glass right now, a pint glass of water. You can see it if you're watching the video portion of this. And it has some sodium and has some potassium in it. And it's a morning thing that I do every day. And that just charges up their adrenals. Yeah. So to answer your specific question there, in your case, based on your results, Chantel, I would say starting off the day with a teaspoon of sea salt and a cap full of our upgraded potassium would be a really good thing for you to do. The first 30 days, I would just do salt only, and then I'd start doing some potassium. If you start to feel that, let's say you're doing some resistance training, and you feel like you don't have the muscle strength, just the contraction ability you normally would, a little more potassium will help with that. It helps obviously with contraction, and then our magnesium will help with relaxing. So a lot of people think, I'll touch on cramps real quick, if that's all right.
Yeah.
A lot of people notice huge relief when a lot of people have cramps that they don't really understand. A lot of women have periods or PMS symptoms that are more severe than they need to be. And in both cases, it's a mixture of potassium and magnesium that's at work. I know a lot of people have been trained to think cramps, potassium, not necessarily the case at all. The reason why is because muscle fibers, for example, need magnesium to relax, and they need potassium to contract. And you need a certain ratio, again, of those. So it's just, we look at those ratios in our hair testing. So it's pretty powerful.
Are you enjoying the summit and hearing all the great advice that you don't want to forget? Get the all access pass and get all the video presentations and the audio downloads of every single session. You can get the all access pass and listen to the summit all year long if you want. The best part is you get all of the transcripts, so you can go back and read and see every little note that they talked about. Go to fastingresetsummit.com to get your all access pass today.
Hey guys, Lauren here. Did you know Chantel just released her new book, Fasting to Freedom? The book is all about the benefits of fasting from a biblical perspective. You'll discover how you can see supernatural healing in your body. You will learn how to discern God's still, small whisper to guide you and help you make decisions. You will also master utilizing God's power to overcome difficult times and receive a breakthrough when you are stuck. And you will see how fasting can help you gain victory over a nagging area of sin in your life. You can order your copy right now on Amazon or go to fastingtofreedom.com. Link is in the show notes.
Hey guys, I just finished writing a quick little 20-page recipe book that has some of my most amazing smoothie recipes. Everyone that comes over is like, Chantel, you can turn a smoothie into gold. And so I'm sharing that with you free. It's got my tropical colada smoothie recipe, my extra super green smoothie that tastes delicious, and it's all for free. Go to chantelrayway.com/smoothie for your free book. I've also developed my own product line. You'll be able to get all these multivitamins that I'm doing in one pill. Each nutrient is totally legit. All the formulas are tested and science-backed without any mystery additives. Personally, my thyroid is better, my skin is glowier, I have more energy. This supplement is vegan, non-GMO, gluten and allergy-free. Go to chantelrayway.com/supplements and check them out. Now back to the show. Awesome. Well, what I'd like to do right now is I can share my screen and talk about this is a sample patient that I will show. But what would you say if you had to say in order, like you've got different minerals, what would you say is the number one thing that people are most, they're most deficient in?
If you allow me a 1 and a 2, I would say it's potassium and magnesium. Yep.
The potassium first and then magnesium.
It's hard to say. It's 1 and 2 a lot. I would say that most people will feel the difference of magnesium, hands down, more. So if you're looking just purely for something you're going to feel and you're going to start sleeping better the first night or two, our magnesium is going to be a game changer for you, even if you're already taking magnesium, because most likely, you're not actually getting enough. Even if you're taking, you might say, "Oh, well, Bart, I'm taking 800 milligrams of this. I'm taking 1,000." You're just not absorbing it. B, you're potentially stressing your system and pushing out other minerals because it's a balancing effect. But people get their dreams back all the time, and they haven't dreamed in years when they start taking our magnesium. But that's something, and because that's a measure of sleeping deeply, and are you hitting polyphasic sleep? Are you able to go deep enough and then remember your dream on the way out? And that can be great for achieving goals too. I mean, once you get into the world of lucid dreaming, you're problem solving, not only when you're conscious, when you're using your conscious mind, but when you're unconscious, when you're dreaming, you're processing things too. Which is a whole nother, we could do a podcast on that. But anyway.
So do you feel like part of magnesium, do you feel like if the magnesium that you guys have helps people with constipation?
Oh yeah, certainly. It's a twofer in that people ask all the time, is this going to give me diarrhea? And no, it isn't, because it's actually going to be absorbed. It's not just because we use magnesium chloride to start with. It's because we make that via our process into something that your cells can utilize without digesting it, without going through your gut. It's a size thing, but because a lot of people are like, oh, well, I've heard for years now that I should take such and such type of magnesium because it crosses the blood-brain barrier. And it's like, well, if you were to only take one, hands down, that would be magnesium chloride. And then if you make that small enough, of course, that's also going to cross the blood-brain barrier. So anyway, yeah, let's see. I know we bounced around there.
Let's look at this. Yeah, that's fine. So let's look at this sample patient. So this is where you would take your hair sample. Now, you can either take the hair sample like from the back of your head, right? Or you could take it from like,
underarm, pubic, auxiliary hair. Yeah, certainly.
But you prefer the hair on your head.
Yeah, I think it has the most research. We have a different pattern for each one of those. So, and the lab we work with now has been doing this, been collecting data on this since the 90s, and they just have more data than anyone else, and so that's great. I lean towards, for a number of different reasons we don't have to go into, to do scalp. If you shave your head or have short hair or really, really thin hair, you can, either not take it from there or, you can space it out. You can take it from 12 different places, but there's a scale. If anyone's listening and trying to picture how this works, there's a paper scale that we've made that folds into a seesaw, and it allows you to figure out exactly how much, so that you don't put too little, because then your sample just it gets recalled, and you have to send in more, which is a pain. So if you just follow instructions, it's there, and you're going to do it right, and you're going to get your results in no time. So, yeah.
Got it. Okay, so let's look at this sample patient that you have. Yeah, sure. What is this person that we're looking on? And if you're listening to this, you might want to pull this up on our YouTube channel so you can actually see this. But what is this person deficient in, according to this sample?
Yeah, so this is a great page to look at. I'm wondering if you could show page 2 as well, because. But regardless, what I would do is, see, page 1, it shows your nutritional elements. It shows your toxic elements as well.
So what should they be? So like there's different ones. So this says like calcium is in the middle, the magnesium is in the middle, but then it says boron and it shows it's high. So when you're looking at these, where should it remain?
It's a great question. So So two things. To answer that, right through the middle is what we're looking for. So you have that white box through the middle, and that is the totality of that is your reference range. The orange line is ideal. So this person's calcium, for example, is ideal. Their boron's a little elevated. It's a really good profile overall. Their manganese, so not magnesium for anyone listening, but manganese is linked to memory function. So, and I think we burn through this very fast when we're multitasking, which we all are from time to time, even though we try not to, even though we know it doesn't work. But if you look at page 2, whether or not you can pull that up right now, I'll just talk through it. There's significant ratios. And the ratios really tell us more of what needs to be understood. And some of those ratios are calcium to phosphorus, zinc to copper, iron to copper, calcium to magnesium, sodium to magnesium, and sodium to potassium. So from those, like in this particular case, this person has a deficiency in sodium as well. If you look, though, at their sodium levels by themselves, you see that, okay, it's a 21, so pretty good. Not terribly low or anything. But when you look at sodium to potassium, you see their potassium is almost ideal. And that ratio overall is a 3.5. So anyway, it lets you know, without getting too much into the numbers. I don't want to confuse people. This is, I just want to help people understand the overall arching sort of premise behind this is you can look at it and go, all right, this person, I can tell without even asking them by looking at their results that they probably fall asleep just fine, but they almost surely wake up and toss and turn throughout the night. I can also tell that they are under pretty heavy stress load. I can also tell that their thyroid function could be better. Therefore, maybe their mental clarity, their overall ambition and drive kind of spits and sputters. They're probably carrying at least a couple extra pounds of extra body fat, just because of their metabolic ratio as well. So, yeah, it's really, really fascinating. Hair just tells so much better of a story if the key is just to analyze it correctly. So, yeah.
So when something is too high,
Right.
then, because that is probably the part of the problem, like even if someone's taking a regular, let's say they're taking multivitamins and they're taking too high, doesn't your body excrete what it doesn't need?
Yes. So there's a couple different things there. So in terms of water soluble things, in most cases, yes, as long as your liver, your kidneys, and everything are working really well, right? As long as a person's not rushing so much that they don't let themselves go to the bathroom. Number one or number two, your body needs to eliminate, and we need to be patient with our bodies and not try to rush through the elimination process. That's something that I find that a lot of people are doing, and those toxins get reabsorbed into the body, and they build up. The other thing people are doing is they're over supplementing, and I think that's something that. A lot of people I know that are in health have been, when I've looked at the results, have been guilty of, myself included at times. So that's why testing is so important, because we can go, all right, well, I found a good thing. Like I found a good horse. Let's ride it into the ground. And all right, I heard that magnesium is great, and I'm just going to take so much of it and it's going to fix all my problems, right? And in truth, it's going to displace sodium, potassium, calcium over time. It's going to block the absorption of manganese if you're taking manganese at the same time, which is why I'm not at all in favor of multivitamins. It's not that I'm not in favor of it. It's that chemically, from either chemistry or physics perspective, when you truly understand mineral antagonism, it doesn't make sense to do that. So one step is I just say, I'm not telling you to throw away your multivitamins, but just put them on the shelf for the next 3 or 4 months. Let's go through this process and let's retest to see where your levels are. And you'll find that this targeted approach, this kind of sniper approach instead of a shotgun blast is just so much more effective. So, yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, this has been fantastic. Tell listeners where they can find you and where they can follow you.
Certainly. Well, thank you, because I think you asked some really great questions. Just things that people really would be curious to know and happy to hear. So, I think I'm sure it was really helpful for people. But if they want to find more, they can find us at upgradedformulas.com. That is upgraded with an ED and formulas with an S. So upgradedformulas.com is the website. And I'm sure you'll have a link for them in the show notes and everything. And just appreciate your time and appreciate you guys listening.
I'm so glad that I did do the hair test. And I think that what you said is so true. I think that what happens is, especially if you're listening to this podcast or listening to a lot of others, another guest comes on and they go, oh, well, this is a great supplement and this is a great supplement. And before you know it, you're taking 30 different supplements. And now you're just putting your body completely out of whack. And so I agree with you. I think that for the most part, we should be getting the majority of our minerals and nutrients from our food that we're eating. But then there's going to be some that we're not going to be able to get from that. And then to limit that as much as possible and put that into having as little supplementation as possible. But there's some that we definitely do need.
Really well said. Really well said. The thing I'll add to your point is that for anyone listening, just know that the soil has roughly half of the nutrients it had 50 or 60 years ago. So the steak or the broccoli you eat has about half the nutrients it had 50 or 60 years ago. And that's true if it's organic or in the case of meats, grass-fed. So I think there's a real case for supplementing the things that you're missing and then finding out what you are missing, right? Finding out what you do need. Really well said.
Awesome. If you have a question that you want answered, go to questions@chantelrayway.com. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.